saw there's no bed. So we went to the office and he said, where's the bed? So they said, hey, it was not occupied. So he said, oh yes, it's occupied, but you better put it back or I go to the television. 7, number 7. So he went.
Yeah.
It was on the air. And they put it back without paying. Yeah.
So you used to come to the park here all the time?
Yeah.
On the weekends, huh?
Oh, I came off. Yeah. I parked my car and I came down. It was like going to the grave for me. Because going down to the grave, that's a big job to go to Mission Street and all. It's unbelievable that he's gone since 81. I didn't think I will live that long, I didn't. And Susan, I said, you can't go first.
And what about, I remember we used to go to Mount Tamalpais?
Yeah, every Sunday. And the children hated it. Tommy and Margaret. Ooh, they didn't like it. And now they march.
When you first moved to California?
Like yours, yeah. Because Milan.
What year did you move?
We moved in 48 we came.
48.
To California, yeah.
And that was, where did you live then?
I lived, first we lived in Pacific Avenue, which was the address, Pacific, because we, Agi Krasny, my cousin, had a friend, and she belonged to that house. That house belonged to her. And she took us in. And
so you lived with her in the house?
no.
No. She gave you the house?
No. No. It was a big apartment house.
Oh.
2070 Pacific. It's a big apartment house. And we lived on the, I don't know, 3rd floor. And in the corner lived a family. He was a judge. And they had 2 children. And the 2 children were the best of friends of my children.
Oh.
So I worked, and I knew they were taken care of. That was a blessing.
Because after school,
Yeah.
Tom and Margaret would go with the cousins.
Tommy had he had to bring Margaret home, and he just did. So she was 5 years old. She had to go alone. Tommy was not responsible. I couldn't trust him.
And
So when you grew up, Grandpa was your second cousin, correct?
Yeah.
So did you know him as long as you can remember?
And he came to us to visit, and he said he wants to marry me. And I said, oh no, I'm going to Vienna, and I will. He waited 7 years
So
And then-
you lived in Bielefeld,
in Bielefeld,
and where did Grandpa live?
in Merisch Ostrau.
So he was from Austria.
Yeah.
So he came to visit. How old were you?
I was 23.
And you had not met him before?
No.
But you knew he was your second, you knew about him, he was your second cousin.
When he came, I heard he was my second cousin. And my brother Ernest, when I came from Vienna, well, and 7 years later, I went out with a guy, and I said, I'm going to Hadassah, a meeting in Hadassah somewhere. But I went with that guy in the mountains. And a woman from Wackstadt, from Bilowitz, saw me. And she came to my parents and said, your daughter is in the mountains with a man, with a guy. So I came home, oh, faith. My brother said, you have to marry Milan Roth.
And so you were 30.
No.
23.
23 when you got married.
25.
So when you first met Milan, you were 18.
Something like that, yeah.
And you waited 7 years.
7 years.
So he was 37. 12
He
years.
was 12 years old.
12, yeah. 37, you were
And
25.
that was too much, 12 years.
For you.
Yeah.
But you said, okay, I'll
No,
marry
I
him.
had to.
You
My
had to.
brother said, you are compromised by that guy. You have to marry him.
Why? It was a scandal that you went to the mountains? Why are you compromised by the other guy?
Because we had a meeting with that friend of mine and his parents and my parents and my brother. And my brother said to this guy, will you marry her? And he said, no, I'm going to Israel. So my brother said, so now you will marry Milan.
Now, Grandpa was married once before, yes?
Yeah. He married a woman in Vienna. And she didn't want any children. And when he found that out, in 2 months he got divorced.
Now, wasn't she a little heavy?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought that was part of the story.
He was a big woman.
Was she? I don't know. I didn't
Okay,
know.
so you married Grandpa,
I married Grandpa
and you were 25.
and I was 25.
Okay, and what year was that?
That was in September.
19.
37?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
So right away
And
then.
Tommy was born right away. Right away. And then 3 years later, Margaret.
But then Milan left for England
Yeah.
right after Tom was born,
Well, Tommy was
6
6 months old
and he left.
and he left. Because we were afraid that he will cry on the border, you know.
So Milan said, you stay here,
And I stay. I said, I keep Tom and you go.
to find a place and
Yeah.
get settled. So tell again about the coin.
Over the border, I took him. We had a restaurant in Marisch Ostrau, and we had a customer, and he came from the border, and I said to him, could you help my husband to take him to Poland, over the border? And he said, okay. How much? I gave him a lot of money. So I took Milan on the train where that man lives, and he put him on the train under the coal. He covered him with coal. And he said, I will go very slowly over the border, but I can't stop. You have to jump. So he jumped, and they caught him.
In Poland.
Yeah. And they stripped him completely in the police station.
Was this in Krakow?
No, Krakow was already good. The border. The border.
This was right on the border of Czechoslovakia and Poland.
And Poland. Yeah. And they stripped him completely. He was completely naked. And he said, now you go back to Czechoslovakia. And Milan said, no, give me my pants, my underpants. And and in the underpants he had gold coins.
How many did you sew them in?
Yeah,
How many?
I don't,
5?
maybe 5, and gave them to the man. So they let him go. But it was winter, and he walked, and the steps, and he dropped something.
When he was leaving the police station?
Yeah, and a child found what it was, a passport or something.
But important documents.
Yeah, and he said, "You have to go back." I said, "No." He said, "No." So he was running and running, and then he could call in Poland. He could call a friend from his brother's wife, and he picked him up, and he was safe.
So the child handed him back his important papers, or else what would have happened? He would have reached a checkpoint and had nothing and been deported. Now at this point, what year was this?
That was in 1938.
Okay, so had Hitler, he had not quite invaded Poland, but he had invaded the Sudetenland. So in Bielefeld, was it German occupied?
Ostrau.
Ostrau. So the Germans were there
Yeah.
in the deal that Chamberlain made
Yeah.
with the Czechs.
Yeah.
And so you guys were wearing Yellow Star?
Chamberlain came with a paper. You are safe.
Peace in our time. It didn't work out.
Didn't work out.
So you had a restaurant. What kind of restaurant was this? You owned it? The family owned a restaurant.
Yeah.
What kind of food?
Well, on order, they made
Just Czech
goulash.
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 Wasn't it the
Short orders.
Okay.
the schnapps, the
Yeah,
raspberry?
yeah. Was it? We had a few. Not only Ostrau, there was Brno, Olmütz. They had
So different branches.
different branches.
Wow.
Yeah,
How many restaurants?
maybe 4.
And this was the Marcos family?
That was Roth.
It was the Roth families.
Urota. The restaurant's name was Urota.
Urota.
Yeah,
What did that mean?
by road.
By road?
By
Yeah.
Roth.
By Roth.
Yeah.
Roth.
And you worked in the restaurant?
And I had to work, and I wasn't used to it, and I didn't want to. And we had a big fight. He said, "You have to."
Did you cook?
No, but I was down in the restaurant. And
You took orders? You waited on the customers?
No, but like Maitre D,
The hostess.
Oh, I hated it. I hated it. Ooh,
So did you have to wear the star?
yeah. And then one day, I had no money. So I sat at the cash register and pushed, but I didn't push the right number and took, And then one day a man came in and sat opposite the cash register, and he watched what I was doing. And then he said, "So, you take your purse and you go."
Who said this?
Gestapo.
The Gestapo. So they took so they just seized the restaurant from the family.
I had no money, and I had to go out.
Okay, so at this point, so the Gestapo was seizing Jewish businesses,
Yeah,
and they were starting to, the pogroms, they were starting to,
they started to
Gather the men.
to manipulate the town. There was nothing the Jews could do. I had to go out. I took my purse and fled.
so at this point was when you and Grandpa said, we have to go.
And then
Grandpa was gone, no?
Grandpa was gone. I made him go because they put him in jail, and Heinrich Beck too, you know, Heini Beck, and my sister's husband. They came to us to live because they were thrown out in Bilowitz already. So they
Thrown out of their homes?
yeah. So they had Uncle Otto came, and they gave him $1, and the Gestapo found out.
They gave him $1?
$1.
What is that?
Money.
Money.
Oh, but it was crowns, right?
In Czechoslovakia were crowns,
Yes.
but the dollars were very important.
American dollars.
Hard currency.
Right.
And the Gestapo found it.
They took it.
And they threw Milan and Heini Beck in jail. And I came in the evening and brought with Emmy, with my sister, coffee to them in jail. And then somehow they came out, and I made Milan right away to go to them.
That was it. That's when you knew that you had to get out.
He had to go out. I was 27 years old. You know, it was a horrible time. Horrible time. And when he went and he left me with Tom, he was 6 months old. So I stayed the whole year with my parents in Weiskirchen. And my parents took care of me with money. And I said, no, that doesn't work. These poor parents, they had so little and taken care of us. No. So I left. It was a very, very difficult.
So you left 1 year after Milan.
Yeah.
Now, why did he go east? Why did he go through Poland?
That's the only way to get out.
That was the only way, because if you went west, you would have to go through Germany, and that's not possible. So he went east, and after he was captured across the border.
He was taken care of by my brother. Had a friend from the sorority, and they had a ship. The last ship from Danzig was leaving, and he took Milan.
But he also had to have gotten a visa to go to England.
No, that
No.
was known.
How did he get to England?
So the ship took him to England.
Straight to
But how did they let him?
At that time, there was not a visa necessary.
Okay.
That was 38. But I had to have a visa already, and then after a year, the guy who gave me the visa was taken by the Gestapo to jail, and my visa was gone. I paid already for it. And one day he called and he said, I'm out. Your visa is all right. So Tommy was with my parents in Weiskirchen. He was sick, a year and a half. And he was such a bad boy. And my mother couldn't take that. She was 60 years old. She was an old woman. My father was 70 years old.
And he was just very active, and he was just.
And he had,
But Tom was very active, and he
Yeah.
was just a toddler, and
yeah.
and just did what toddlers
You
do.
know, if I think what I did to go out in the blue, I had nowhere to go. I had the ticket to go to Bulgaria, but Milan in England didn't know that I have the visa and the possibility to go out. So I went by train on the 1st of January 1940. And my parents took a man to send me to the border with him so that he helps me with the suitcase. And I came to Vienna. And Tommy, it was a cold winter, January, and he had a sack, a fur filled. And I carried him, and he was so heavy with that sack. And I went to a coffee house and said, no juice, but I had to go somewhere. So I went in the back, and he screamed. Oi, oi. I was so afraid. Terrible. And then I left to the Südbahn and went to Yugoslavia and there. And when I came to Yugoslavia, there was a friend in Zagreb. And they waved, and I was in the train. And I wanted to go out to send Milan a telegram to England that I'm out. And the police said, no, you can't. You can't leave the train. You have the ticket to go to Bulgaria. You can't interrupt. You have to go. I said, I have to go to send my husband a telegram. No, you can't go. I said, if you don't want me to go out, I go in front of the train and you can go over me. So they gave me the permission for one night. So I sent a telegram or a cable to Milan, and he didn't get it. They kept the money.
They never sent it.
No. Then I had to go to Bulgaria, to Sofia. Where shall I go? I had no hotel, no nothing. So the people went out of the train and I said, where is the best hotel in Sofia? And they gave me Helvetia. I still can see. I came to Helvetia, no money. I said, I want to talk to the manager. So the manager came. I said, look, I'm a refugee. I came from over the border. You have to take me. I have no money. You have to take me. He said, you are not the only one. I said, don't make me the only one, but you have to take me. I have my child. So he gave me a room on the very top where the personnel lives. So they gave me a room. And opposite the room was a telephone. So Tom couldn't go to sleep when somebody is in the room. I had to go out. So I went to the telephone booth and cried. It was unbelievable. And he was still in diapers, but not the throwaway, the linen diapers. I had to wash them and where to dry them. Oh my God.
What did he eat? Did you have milk? Did people give you milk?
So I went to the creamery for milk. And I came in the creamery and I said, I want milk. And the guy made like this. And I thought, oi weh, that's a Nazi auch? And that meant yes. I didn't know. And I left without milk. And then I came back to the hotel. I said, I need milk. So why don't you go to the creamery? And he said, the guy made like this. And he said, that means yes. If I think that over what I went through, I don't think I could do that. It was hell. It really, if you think you have a child 1.5 year old and you are all alone and no push pram and you have to carry that kid, and then was a holiday, I couldn't go to the English consulate. So I had to wait another day, and then I went to the consulate. And I said I had a visa, but because of the war, it became nothing. So after 3 weeks, they gave me the visa. There were 50 people in the office, and I was the only one to get the visa. And then they all came to the train. And we all cried. We all cried. It was unbelievable.
How did you stay at that hotel for 3 weeks?
3 weeks,
That man let you stay?
yeah. And then I had to have a ticket to go to England. I had no money. So Milan sent me a telegram to go to the bank, and there is this man, and he will give. And I came to the bank. There was this man, and he said, what do you think? I should give the money? I haven't got the money. I said, if you don't give me the money, I said, I will stand in front and I will make such a noise that you will be embarrassed. So he gave me the money. So he gave me the money, but I sent it back to him.
After the war?
Yeah. No, not after the war.
When you got to England?
When it was over.
So you took a train from Bulgaria, from Sofia,
Yeah,
to the coast of France?
yeah, I got back in the Oriental Express, Orient Express,
Yes.
to go back to Paris, and now how I got to the plane or whatever it was, I can't remember. But when I came to the Orient Express, there were 2 English guys, and they paid every meal for me. And I came to England, and I said, Milan, run after these people. They paid for me, and they were gone.
So you never even got to thank them?
No. And in Calais, I had to be overnight in Calais.
Where's Calais?
That's on the coast. So you must have taken a ferry from Calais.
Yeah, a ferry to England. And they said, you take that room and you will get dinner. And I didn't let the people come in with the dinner. We had no dinner.
Because
I was afraid he will take advantage.
the man wanted something in
Yeah.
return for the dinner.
So I didn't open.
So you didn't
the door.
open the door, he knocked. And that was in Calais.
That was it.
So you left on January 1st.
Yeah,
You went to Yugoslavia
yeah.
and Zagreb, and then you went to Sofia
Sofia.
for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
waited for your visa. It came, you got the money, you took the Orient Express to the coast of France and took a ferry over to England. So that was by the...
Now I came to England, and the train was already waiting, and they didn't want to let me go to England. They thought I'm a spy. So they interviewed me, and I said, what do you want from me? I have my child here. I'm a refugee. I'm so glad to come to England. I'm not a spy. So the train was waiting until I came. And then it was all the misery was still luck.
And you had black hair when you started the journey?
My aunt in Prague said, how can you go with white hair? So I give you money, have you tinted. So I tinted my hair, and when I came to England, they were green. And I came to the hostel where Mila was staying, and the woman said, you couldn't find a nicer wife.
So your hair was white all along. Before you left in Czechoslovakia,
Yeah.
you always had white hair.
Yeah. I was 25 years old and I was white. Yeah. And now I have to go to the toilet. I would like
Go.
Yeah.
Cliff House. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
And you had a crab salad. And what else would you like to say?
What I like to say, I have to say, I'm so grateful and thankful for you to take me here. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, it was our privilege to be here with you.
I will never forget it.
Well, neither will we.
I remember that lunch in Yountville. I never will forget it. That was wonderful.
Good. Busy's good.
Good food and good company. A nice view.
That was beautiful. Beautiful. You two know how to live. You really do. You make the best of life.
Where did we learn that from?
What?
Who did we learn that from? Who did we learn that from?
Yeah.
You.
No, you learned it yourself. You know how to do it. I'm very proud of you. Proud. Very proud. And the most of it, I like that you get along so well. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to know that you are not alone, that you are really together.
We pretend in front of you.
No,
And when we
you can't pretend. You can't. This is a real McCoy.
Where did we leave off last time?
You should watch the tape and
You what?
wind the.
We could. Well, maybe you could tell the story about when you got to. So you, like, maybe it was when we left off, you were in Calais and you took the ferry to England.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. They waited for us. The train didn't leave until we boarded. And then we came to England,
So you were on the
London.
ferry
to London.
and you landed on the coast in what, Dover?
And we arrived in London on the station.
Well, you came on the ferry and then you must have come to a port, right? Because London is inside the
Yeah, that was.
So did you still
the
just
White Cliff of Dover.
White Cliffs of Dover, and then was Grandpa there waiting for you, or
No.
no?
No, he waited for us in London at the station.
So you got to Dover, and then you.
And we came from Dover to London. And the train waited for Tom and me, and then he left. And we arrived in London with a lot of Verspätung, delay. And when we arrived and Milan came to pick us up, he didn't recognize me.
Why?
I changed so much in that year. But Tom cried,
He didn't recognize Grandpa?
and he didn't know him.
Right.
And I was so glad when he came, and I said, "Here, take him, take my responsibility." And Tom said, "No, no, nine, that man, nine." He didn't want to go to him.
Well, he didn't know him. I mean,
No.
he was 6 months old when
Yeah, when he
Grandpa left.
Yeah. And so he took him, and then he took me to a hotel. And one night he said the hostel where he stayed was so bad, he didn't want me to be right away in the hostel, so he took a room in a hotel. And I was so pleased because I could clean the diapers from Tom. And then the next day we went to his hostel where he stayed. And I remember it was raining, and the rain came through the roof.
After all that.
Yeah.
So when you arrived in England, at that point, could you take off the star, or did you still have to wear it?
Yes.
So you
Already
felt
in
like it was
Sofia.
complete. Oh, by the time you got into Sofia,
Yeah.
you had sort of felt like you had escaped
Yeah,
that
yeah.
situation. But
I
and-
remember when I came to Zagreb, over the border, and that was, I left Austria, I left the Nazis, and I said, "Are we now in Yugoslavia?" And the people around me said yes. And I threw him in the air. "Tom, we are safe." And then the people in the coupe put money in my pocket. And with this money, I sent Milan a telegram, and they didn't send the telegram off.
yeah,
They kept the money. So he didn't know we were safe.
so when you first saw him at the train station, I mean, he knew you were coming because you had spoken to him in Sofia.
Yeah.
But was he? I mean, was it just relief or joy, or you were both so
Yeah, well,
exhausted that you couldn't?
I said to him, "You run after these people because they took care of me the whole week in the train. They affect me." And the people when they left.
They probably wouldn't have accepted the money anyway.
So
So when you got to the hostel, now I read that Churchill had decided early on, for the safety of the Jews, he put them into camps in England. Is
In
that
England.
so? Was it
but we were
that
not in a camp.
you weren't
No,
in a camp?
No. But I had the privilege because I suffered so much. I didn't have to serve. I didn't have to be the maid because my visa was made out for me to be a maid.
That was
So-
the kind of work that you
so
had.
when I came to London, they knew what I was suffering. They said, "You don't need to work." So I was helped by the Czech government, and I got some money to live on
In England,
in England.
even at the time they were being occupied by the
Yeah.
Germans.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
It was the Czech uh, outside of Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't need to work. I could stay with Tom.
And what was Grandpa, what was he working? What was he doing?
What was he doing? I think he had a job. I can't remember anymore. I only know when we come to live in the Ulzwater, he worked in the forest. He was picked up with a truck every morning and went to the forest and worked.
What did he do there?
In the forest, he cut wood and whatever you do in the forest.
And the town you were in the hostel was?
No, that was Patterdale Hall.
And that's a suburb of London?
And that was at the lake, Ulzwater Lake, a hostel. And what did I do in that hostel? I think I was helping cooking or something.
But it was one room, and did you have your own?
Room, we had one room, and Margaret was born there.
And then how long between Tom, so you arrived?
I arrived in England.
So you left on January 1st from
I left Czechoslovakia on January 1st, 1940. And I was staying 3 weeks in Sofia, Bulgaria.
So you got to England about the end of January.
I got to England well, 3 weeks after the end of
January. 1948.
Yeah. No, 40.
1940, sorry.
40. And then I stayed in England with Milan until 8 years, and then we came to America.
So
Uncle Krasny sent us 2 affidavits. The one I said, no, I'm not leaving England. And then a second came, and then I said, okay, Milan didn't feel too good.
okay, so it was the beginning of 1940.
Yeah.
And Germany had officially declared war.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, England had declared war on Germany.
Yeah.
And England was bombing German towns, and then Germany started to fly the bombs to England.
Yeah.
So what was that like with the air raid sirens and?
Well, that was very, very upsetting. Very upsetting. England had suffered a great deal by the Germans, and when they wanted to attack to land in England, it was so foggy that the German Air Force couldn't find
The targets.
the target. And
So you could be walking down the street and the siren would go
Yeah.
off. You
Yeah.
could be sleeping in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
How close did any bombs ever come?
Every day they came over at 9 o'clock at night. Every night.
So you could at least know that was coming.
And we went to the air raid shelter in the garden. That was just a little cover,
Bunker
bunker,
underneath the ground.
and with the children, yeah.
So you were January 1940,
Yeah,
and so just drawing the timeline, you must have gotten pregnant with Mommy pretty soon after you arrived, yes?
in Abergavenny, I got pregnant. And I was so mad at Milan. And whole months I didn't talk to him.
And
We had nothing. And here I was pregnant. I had a job in a little, what was it? My boss was working in the fields. He was my boss. And I had to cook for him on a flame. There was no gas, just on a flame.
so you had to actually light a fire
Yeah,
and put a pot over it, or
yeah,
okay. So you got pregnant and you were upset.
yeah. I
and
was very upset. Oh, I was so upset. And then we moved from Abergavenny to Butterdale Hall.
while
That
you were
was-
pregnant.
Yeah. And that was very civilized. We had, the food was cooked with a cook, and I didn't have to work. I just looked after Tom. And after a while, Margaret was born in Kendal. That was a hospital near up at Butterdale Hall.
But before that happened, you decided that it was impossible to have another child, right?
Yeah,
And you contemplated having an abortion.
yeah.
And you
And I went
actually
to
set
London.
out to do it.
I went to London to be aborted. Yeah,
So you took a train
I had to take a train,
and
and it was curfew at 8 o'clock. I had to be wherever I had to. So that lady doctor who made the abortion took her life. Somebody talked about it.
she committed suicide?
Yeah,
So wait, all right, so you went to London
yeah. I went to
on
London
a train.
by train.
Did Grandpa know you were going to do this, or
Oh
did
yes. Oh,
you guys decided together?
I decided it together. Yeah,
And so you took a train and you went that day, but it was getting late.
it was late, and it was very, very secretively, because that lady doctor was not allowed to make abortions. And the next, what I heard was she took her life.
But tell me what happened on that day. You got there, and why did you not carry through with
Yeah,
with it?
I didn't want another child.
But what prevented you? You went to do it. You took the train.
Yeah,
Was there an air raid siren or something that stopped you, or did you?
no, I took the train to London and went to this doctor, and she performed the abortion. And the next day I went home again. And everything was okay.
But then how was Mommy born? How are we here?
She was born before the second abortion. I mean the first abortion. Margaret was born in April, and when I had the abortion, it was afterwards.
So you got pregnant again
Yeah.
after Mom was
Yeah.
born.
Yeah.
Did you not contemplate having an abortion for Mom? Or you got pregnant and you decided to?
I wanted to have an abortion, but I couldn't go to London. It didn't work. It was curfew, and I tried several things on my own, but it didn't work. And Margaret was born. And I'm so glad she was.
So you never went, because the story I had heard was you tried, or you were going to.
I tried so hard to get rid of her.
What did you do?
I took iodine, and I took some other, I don't know what, but she stuck. She was just born, and I was very happy then. But
And then you immediately got pregnant again
well, yeah, and
after she was born.
That was yeah, when I went to London.
And was that hard for you?
Very, very hard. Very hard. But I was glad I could make it. And she was a wonderful child. And then my brother-in-law, Heini Beck, Dr. Beck, came to visit, and he said, she is not right fed. You have no orange juice. You have to have orange juice for the child. And what happened was, when she was born, her teeth suffered so much. She had not enough vitamins. She was not enough fed. But she only had one set of teeth. The second didn't show up.
I mean, on the bottoms or the
top.
So she had baby teeth, but then
Yeah.
the adult teeth.
Yeah.
She never. So
She suffered a lot with her teeth. I remember the dentist, what was the name? The French,
Mitch Lipman,
what?
Dr. Lipman.
Lipman, yeah. He was a dentist. How could you have, how did they feed you? He was very upset about that. And then what, she became such a wonderful person. She was a wonderful person. In school she was so good. We came to America and she skipped one grade.
So tell about the whole impetus to come to America and what, because you had been through all you'd been through, you were finally safe in England.
In England.
Or you thought, I mean, did it?
Milan became sick.
How
and
so?
He couldn't get a job in England. So we came to America.
How sick? What was sick how?
He had depression.
He was depressed.
Yeah.
And so he was just having a hard time coping.
He couldn't hold a job. So we went to America. We thought it will be better here.
Did you think that it was possible at that time that the Germans might win and come to England? I mean, was that a real fear?
That was a big fear of us, yeah.
Do you remember when the Americans got in the war? I mean, do you remember reading about Pearl Harbor, and were you aware that the United States was going to get involved?
I think I was didn't we were already in America when Pearl Harbor was attacked?
When did you no, Pearl Harbor was 41.
No, we came later.
You went in 1948.
Yeah.
So you actually lived through the war.
Through the war in England, yeah. And we were evacuated because of my child. And we came to Abergavenny, where I had that job as a housekeeper. And Milan was the gardener in Abergavenny.
For a wealthy English family?
in an English family, a gardener.
You guys are the same employer or different houses?
No, he was in a castle, a gardener, and I was the employee from the castle had a house, and I took over the housekeeping.
So, did you get a telegram from some family in the United States saying you should come? Had you just, the thought just...
Tommy went to a Czech school
In England?
in England, and my uncle came from Africa, Uncle Otto, and he said, "Are you crazy? You would even think to go back to Czechoslovakia? This is crazy. You have to stay here." So that's what we did. It was very difficult for Milan to get a job. I was a dressmaker, and I sewed and made extra money to survive. It was very difficult.
So you ended up deciding, okay, we're going to come to the United States.
Yeah.
And what was that a difficult process with the visas? Did you have to get...
Well, we got the process to get a visa was not easy because we had to be very well. Nobody had to be sick, and thank God everybody was well. We could come.
When you arrived in England, could anybody speak any English at all?
Nobody could speak English.
So how did you learn?
Well, my English is not so good. But I got by.
Did you take a class, or did you just begin to be around the language?
We just picked it up by listening, talking.
How are the kids about moving to America? Because Mom was 6 and Tom was...
Yeah, Tom
was probably 8 or 9.
Tom had a very hard time at school. He had an Welsh accent. We were staying in Cardiff for a while, and he picked up the Welsh accent.
Yeah.
And he had a very hard time at school. But Margaret was marvelous. She went to a very good school and was very much liked by everyone. And when we came to America, she just skipped from grade.
Were they excited about it?
No, they didn't want to come.
They didn't want to come.
They were already used to live in England.
So you saved up some money to get 4 tickets on a ship.
Yeah.
And you got visas.
We got
Everybody
visas
passed their...
from Agi Krasny,
Yeah.
and she helped us with money too.
And who was Agi Krasny?
She was a cousin of Milan. And she wanted me to be her nurse. And
She was old?
Yeah. And she wanted so very much I should take care of her. But I'm everything but a nurse. I said I can't do that. We has nothing, but I couldn't do it. So I went as in a dressmaking shop, and I was dressmaking. Milan couldn't get a job. He was so depressed.
Now this is in New York.
That was in San Francisco.
Well, what was so you came on the ship
On the ship to New York.
to New York and you went through Ellis Island, correct?
No.
No.
No, we came by boat. We arrived by boat 1 day late because it was a hurricane. And a friend of Milan's from Merisch Ostrau picked us up by boat at the station.
So wait.
And he wanted us to stay in New York. And I said, no, I can't stay in New York. The weather is so bad. So we went to San Francisco.
Okay, so you came across in the boat.
Yeah.
Was it very stormy at sea?
A very rough sea. It was 1 day late.
Yeah. So you were in the hurricane. I mean, it was really
Yeah.
violent. And then,
Yeah.
so you arrived in New York.
In New York 1 day late, and the people who picked us up wanted us to stay in New York.
But you did not come through Ellis Island through
No.
at the Statue of Liberty.
No.
How did they? But didn't they have to process you somewhere?
Yeah, on the station.